We do nostalgia. And the whole nation under Trumpism is gripped by that, the notion that once upon a time we were great. Now, they'll never tell you when you ask them when, right? Because I do that, because I'm pushy that way and obnoxious. And I'll say, well, when was it great? And they always are like, well, because they know any answer they give makes them sound like a jerk, right? They can't give a good answer they can't say the 50s, because then they're going to be like, oh yeah, wait, They can't say the 1911 like teens or something, because children are working in mines and factories. They know that sounds terrible, but in a way that's what they're thinking, right? That we want to go back to this age of supposed innocence when everything was wonderful. And so nostalgia makes up a big piece of it, and that's nothing new. The second thing Trumpism is predicated on is a backlash to real, or at least perceived gains, but often real gains made by people of color. If you want to understand what's going on in this country, it's one thing to come and listen to me, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm totally going to sell you books in a minute, so that's my subliminal. I'm a slick salesman like that. I just put it out there for you. Read mine for sure, but please read Carol Anderson's book. Carol Anderson, a brilliant scholar at Emory University, who wrote this book, White Rage, that came out about a year ago, maybe 15 months ago. It's a brilliant book. Because what she talks about, and she does it in only 148 or 172 pages or something, very quick, very brief, to the point, talking about how every single iteration of progress, specifically for black folks, but I think you can make the same analysis for peoples of color generally, every diminution of whiteness as power, every advance was met not just with the term backlash, which is almost a soft sell, right? But real rage, whether that was the rage that met the end of enslavement, right? The Reconstruction era met with intense hatred, and the resurrection of really slavery-like conditions for African-American folk throughout the South, a vicious resurgence of white supremacy, culminating, of course, in Jim Crow laws. When the Great Migration takes place and you have black folks moving north to escape conditions in the South, they are met with a significant rage in the Midwest and the Northeast and the industrial corridors of this country, overt racial pogroms. We call them race riots, but that doesn't do it justice, right? Racial pogroms, orgies of violence that meet these migrants looking for work, right? Again, some themes repeat themselves over and over in our history, as we see right now with the way that we treat migrant labor as well. White rage that met the Brown versus Board of Education decision, a kind of rage that led entire school districts to simply shut down their public schools in the South, create white flight, so-called Christian academies where the white folks could go and end black schools or black schooling after 5th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade. It was a form of real rage. We saw it culminate not only in the South, in places like Boston, right? And there were desegregation crises out here, as you well know. And so, right, West Coast, East, South, all around the country, that kind of rage which met progress. And of course, then that culminates even beyond the desegregation backlash with the response to affirmative action, the response to the Fair Housing Act, all kinds of backlash that we saw throughout the 80s. And then, of course, with the advances signified or symbolized by the presidency of Barack Obama, you get birtherism, you get the Tea Party, you get this I want my country back mentality, putting aside how concrete the gains for black and brown folks really were in the years of the Obama administration, and we can debate that. I personally think there's a lot, of course, that was left on the table, so to speak. I don't put that on him. I put that on us and him. All of us together had to do more, didn't do enough. But the point is, it certainly was symbolic of advance. It was symbolic of progress, and it was met with the same kind of rage. And so what we're seeing with Trumpism is what we saw in the 60s and the early 70s. It's what we saw in the 1920s and the 1930s. It's what we saw in the 1890s.